Right.
All right, so we are at 7 o'clock, and we have people I recognize from Crossroads. Why don't you come down and we'll get started.
I'll give you that 2 years ago. It's your favorite part of all
Oh, yeah.
subdivisions.
I have so many favorite parts. Okay, so, we've got a quorum.
Eric will not be here.
Oh, what did, he just said he was.
His wife is
traveling.
working, and so he has to stay home with the kids.
All right, so this is the group you got, if you're willing to accept it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, why don't we all introduce ourselves again, just so that we refresh our faulty memories.
Dave Robbins, Planning and Zoning Administrator.
John Stadler, Planning Board.
Tim Cook, planning board.
Vicki Smith on the planning board, and I'm a former board member at Crossroads and a former parent. I don't feel as though there's any reason for my recusal for tonight, because there's no reason for me to feel biased one way or the other.
And are you comfortable with that?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And I'm Kevin Sire, so I'm the ex officio of the select board on the planning board.
All right, well, we've read your extensive literature, or I assume we have. And I just wondered whether there was anything you wanted to add, or anything else you wanted to say?
I feel like that's very.
No, it was very
Yeah, very thorough.
thorough.
There's just maybe one or two little quick things to add. Well, first, just as long as we're doing introductions, this is Brad White, he's the head of school. Phil Harrison, former parent, former trustee, helping out with this process. And this is Rod Finley from Pathways Consulting.
You look familiar.
Yes. The two things, I didn't spend a lot of time in the narrative talking about it, because I think we already discussed this at our informal meeting last September, but one of the principal things driving this whole effort to consolidate these lots is the fact that right now Crossroads has two properties, and there's a property line that literally runs right through the middle of the campus, and there's this now 22-year-old trailer which houses our middle school, which the school would like to replace with a suitable building, and the place to locate it, or the place where we'd like to, falls in the setback between these two properties. So by consolidating the properties, those go away. The second thing, which is sort of the second part of this application, and gets into the plan development application that was heard originally back in 2004 for lot 56, which is the bigger lot, which will be the, if this is, lot merger is approved, it will be the lot that survives. And that is that when we went through this process back in 2004, 2005 with the zoning board and the planning board, the zoning board approved the plan development for this lot.
This was 2005?
This is 2004, the zoning board approved a plan development for lot 56 with density controls as far as lot coverage, gross floor area, and gross building footprint. And then it said in its decision that it wanted the planning board to confirm those dimensional controls, which the planning board did in 2005, and we went through the sort of full-blown site plan review, which, you know, was massive construction documents and a whole bunch of, you know, extensive hearings that went on for several months. But what we're asking for here is that if the lot merger is approved and the area that we're referring to as Area 2 of now Lot 56 gets folded into Lot 55 gets folded into Lot 56, we would like, or we hope that you would be able to update the dimensional controls to take into effect the addition of roughly 4 acres.
You address that on page 5.
Right, and so the reason why we're requesting that confirmation now is it's very helpful for the school for planning purposes going into this whole process, because we're gonna come back before this board probably more than once over the next couple of years with another, huge application with a middle school building, revision of sort of driveways and parking, and it's helpful for us to have sort of a guideline to know that, like, we have so many square feet of lot coverage we can work with, and so we're hoping that as part of the decision, you can just take that into consideration, and that would be a helpful resource for us going forward, knowing that we're gonna be back before this board again.
Understood, that seems the intelligent thing to do.
So is area two, it's gonna become part and parcel of,
Yes.
of
it's a
lot
of
56?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Because I don't think here, it didn't really ever say part and parcel, but I assume it was gonna
But the plans say lot line adjustment, so that would be,
make it part and parcel. yeah.
So we'll have that
So
language.
you
so
had-
that language will be put
I
in.
have another question, just not that it's relevant necessarily, but you bought, like, area two, you didn't own it, you did own it, right? But it was, I didn't quite understand how that,
So area
Baines
two and area one,
right?
it's legally considered one lot. That's lot 55. It's a condominium that Bain Stevenson originally set up.
Right, I remember, yeah.
And somewhere, I'm not sure when he split the condominium into two areas, area one and area two. It may have been when GDT was the occupant of area two, or it may have been when Crossroads moved.
So he did a subdivision, basically.
He did the subdivision.
He did two lots, yeah.
He did the subdivision in
Well,
19.
no,
It'd be
he created a
two
condo.
units,
Did-
condos.
Two areas.
Two
did-
areas.
Condominium with two areas and multiple units.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
This is
so,
probably
so the way,
irrelevant,
it's
but-
sort of, it's complicated, but it's one lot that's a condominium, but it's divided into two areas.
Right.
One area, area one is all residential except for, I think, Randy Mudge's commercial offices there. And area two is Crossroads. Crossroads has total operational control, but from a legal standpoint, it's one property currently. So what we're requesting is a lot line adjustment, which would enlarge lot 56 to
Right, right.
consume or subsume
So
area.
you own area two?
We own the
You guys
buildings, but from a fee perspective, it's one property. The land, nobody owns the land except for the condominiums, the legal structure
They
currently.
still own area two?
Yeah.
Condominiums still own?
Currently.
Okay.
But you'll be.
But it would be Crossroads and all the condominiums own both pieces.
Both pieces, and what we're requesting, and when I say we are, meaning, that includes all of the condominium owners who sign the application, because it affects all of our land,
Right.
is to move the property line so that area two is no longer part of the condominium. It will become wholly owned by Crossroads County.
And
So
you'll be getting those signed agreements.
That's right, and so that's the other part of this process, that it's a little bit of a chicken or egg kind of thing. Like, we have signatures from all of the condominium owners authorizing us to proceed with this application, because we know that in this process, things might change, like there might be a condition that you established that we didn't envision.
Well, I think one of the conditions, at least that I would want, is that it would be conditional upon the signed agreements.
Right.
Yeah.
So the thinking, or our thinking, is that if we go through this hearing tonight and you approve the lot line adjustment with conditions, then we would have our attorneys draft a deed and draft revised condominium documents that would incorporate all the conditions that are established, easements, rights of way for the town, anything else. And then, assuming that those documents conform to all of your conditions, then at some point we would have a closing. The condominium owners would all sign a deed that would, transfer this land to Crossroads, meeting all the conditions established here, which hopefully either this board or David would be authorized to sign off that, yes, this meets all of the conditions you established.
Right. So, yeah.
Okay, so, do any board members have questions? There's a person there who has questions.
So is this the correct acreage, or is the survey the correct acreage? This says there's a 6 acre difference. It's either 323 or 317.
It's 317, right?
Yeah, it's the survey.
Okay, well, there was a, I guess that it's in here, that it's a different, yeah, it's,
177, 317 square feet, 4.07.
right, so I guess it's a different one on here, the acreage. There was a 323 somewhere. I just didn't know where
Rick,
that
you talking
came
about
from.
area two?
Yeah, area 2 is different acres, but if we all can say it's 317.
Well, the thing, is, I think, the difference is that, you're not, annexing all of area two. You're only annexing up to Hughes Brook. There's area beyond, Hughes Brook, so the,
Oh, that's the 6 acre difference?
right,
Okay.
the annexation is only part of area two up to the center line of Hughes Brook.
Okay, thank you for
So is it
clarifying
4.07?
4.07, if that's what I
Yeah.
read correct, I don't wanna put words in your mouth.
Okay, so, yeah, there's like this thing about reserving 15% for the residents, so you're reserving 15% of your allowable square footage for a residence that might happen at some point?
That's the way the plan development regulations
Right,
require that any, if there's 100,000 square feet of gross floor area, that at least 15% of that,
Right.
15,000 square feet would have to be reserved for residential use.
so, yeah, maybe we should make that clear, like how much would then be put to the school and how much is reserved for the residents and all the documents, just so that we don't start throwing numbers around and go, oh, we have this amount. And that's just clear throughout.
Well, it would be 15%
That
of the.
is reserved for residential and can't be used for the school
Future,
use.
right.
Right,
But the addition would be just what they're adding, the lot, area two, additional square footage for living space would just be what they're adding, right? 15%
well,
of the.
we've gotta confirm what that number is and then make it clear in all the documentation how much is for school and how much needs to be reserved for the residents to be in compliance with the zoning. That's-
Right.
That's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
I'm trying to say. So I just think that should be brought out. I wondered where exactly the right-of-way, to access, Area 1 would be for the town, and is that something that has been, reviewed by our fire department? So that, it works if they're whipping in with a truck or whatever they're gonna need to do, that they can actually get to where they're going? Do you know where that's gonna be?
Well, I believe there's a gate on the fence right now, because even though it's all considered one property today, it's still area one and area
Right,
two, and there's a
yeah,
fence between them, and
yeah.
so I think when they built the fence, there's an obvious location where there's, hinged gate, so that the fire department can,
Well, is that a gate location that our fire department likes, or does it just happen to be where the gate is?
I think they designed it to,
They-
going to a conversation with Mike at one point.
that's something that, we would
I
be
mean,
amenable to moving if they had.
right, yeah, I just wanna be sure that if we're establishing a right-of-way, that we have a location that we're going to, that our fire department likes. The
Well,
fact that it's
do we
there-
wanna have, do we wanna make that a condition?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that should be, it makes no sense to have this right-of-way if it's actually not a
Right.
functional thing. And it seems to me that that should also show on the plan, so that we don't have sheds going in there, or play structures, or a dumpster, or whatever, that be identified, so that it's always clear and we don't get things in the way. So, and I wondered if, so there's nothing on the plan that talks about the Clee campus. You've got this note here about Clee campus, and I see Clee building, but should that be area 2? When we talk about the easements and agreements here, because it says, easement from Crossroads to the owners for the condominium access to the Clee campus for recreational use, and I don't really know where the Clee campus is, so could that be called Area 2 instead of the Clee campus?
Yeah, I mean, that's just, probably should have been made more clear, but in the narrative, Clee campus and Area 2 are synonymous.
Okay, so that's gonna be in the new condo document, or is that?
Well, there won't be an Area 2 in the new condo document.
Okay, so how are people gonna know that that's synonymous? It's like, if you could just put in parentheses, Area 2, that would be fine with me, because I wanna know that in 20 years, when people are looking at it, it's like, what the heck is the Clee campus? And, because it will be just one big campus probably then, so just to make that clear. And then, another question I had is, after the lot line adjustment, is Area 1 zoning compliant?
I believe so.
Has anybody really looked at that?
I have, and I believe it to be.
Okay,
It is, the minimum lot size is 2 acres, it's 4.07, minimum road frontage.
no,
Oh,
I'm
sorry,
sorry,
the
that's
other-
Area 1.
Area
So,
one.
yeah, so there's 11 acres left, yes, sir. But is, like, all the lot coverage stuff?
I have not gone through the lot coverage of the remainder, I have not had time to.
I know that the Area 2 lot coverage is not compliant because of a mistake that was made in a calculation back in 2001.
Okay.
And so one of the things that Crossroads is hoping to accomplish by making this lot line adjustment is to absolve that issue,
Nonconformity.
nonconformity, and take, and I'm not certain, but I am fairly confident that any lot coverage problems associated with the condominium property were Crossroads created, not an issue created by Area 1. So I think that by taking Area 2 out of the condominium, what is left, it will be compliant from a lot coverage, gross floor area, building footprint perspective.
Is there a way that we can just have that documented so it's in the file, so that these guys know that after this happens, that they're all good, so,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we can require that.
Well, it is a requirement of the
Right.
subdivision, I believe subdivision or the, I keep, have to get the exact quote, but that it is the applicant's responsibility to ensure that the lots both lots will be compliant.
Yeah, but since we're doing the lot adjustment, we'd like to
Right, no.
make sure we're not.
Right, no, I agree, I'm agreeing 100% with you, I'm
Okay.
just saying that it is on the applicant's, it is part of their responsibility.
okay. I think that is all that I had. Yeah, see, I guess here's where I was getting the 7723223s. So, I don't know if that should be there or not. So it should be maybe the 177, yeah, on page 8 and 9, instead of 177, 317, it was the 177, 323. I don't know. I was just wanting to be sure that we have a consistent.
I'm sorry, Vicki,
So
what
on
we're.
page 8.
Yeah, I'm on page 8.
Yeah, and it says lot 56 will be, okay, it's the bottom
Right.
paragraph, it'll be expanded by 1,077,323 feet.
Right.
And it should be actually 177,317 square feet.
So which is,
It's a 6-foot difference, but it should be all
it
consistent.
should be consistent, so
Yeah,
which is the accurate number?
It's the
317.
317, because the other 6 feet didn't get conveyed, or it's not gonna be conveyed, or 6 acres isn't gonna be conveyed. Well, hold it, square feet.
No, this is square feet, not
Yeah.
the acreage.
What number, I can just,
Okay, so on page 8 and page
Bottom-
9
the bottom
is where
paragraph.
the 323 came up to me.
Right here.
So I'm just wanting everything to be consistent. So that
So what is the proper number?
seems to be, I think,
177, 317.
317.
Okay.
Yeah, And then again, on page 9, the basis of the calculation is using the 323 rather than the 317.
Okay, I got it.
All right, so are we, what would change on 9?
17.
The same.
Same thing?
It's just
So
twice,
that's
so with a
17,
different number, yeah.
717.
Yep, 317. 177, 317,
Oh, 317.
yeah.
And then that 35,645 would be 35,463.
643, I think.
30.
Whoop, you're right,
35,643?
yeah, because that's where I hadn't changed it when I did transposed it, like we talked about,
Right.
so yes, 6.
All right, so, let's get to the, page 5, the lot coverage issue. So here, we got the 317, right? That's the right figure.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, the way you have it is area 2 less than 20%, 26,000 feet, 177 equals 35,643 square feet. Therefore, maximum lot coverage, 26,000 square feet. Any comments or questions about that?
Yeah, I had an issue with that number.
Okay.
Your maximum lot coverage, you stopped it at 26,000 square feet. And I think what you were looking at is in the zoning under,
The dimensional controls.
right, well,
Oh.
no, it's lot coverage, and I think you were looking at B. Shall not exceed 26,000 square feet per lot size averaged.
Yeah.
I don't think that applies, because this is not a lot size averaged lot. This is a planned development. And in here, you know, this, I don't see anywhere in the maximum lot coverage where a lot sized averaging lot is held to the 26,000 square feet. All I see is that it is provided in table 5 or as follows. I don't see anything in here that limits it, so I think the number is the raw number of the 20%, not limited to the 26,000. Now, the board may feel different, but that's my own reading of that.
So that's a difference of almost 10,000 square
That's the
feet.
difference of almost 10,000 square feet. But as I say, in reading this, I do not see, you know, it does specifically talk about the commercial district, but only lot-sized average lots. And this is a planned development. And I looked back through the,
We did a conventional subdivision, but not outside that.
did not do lot-size averaging. So my,
So where does this say that this is a planned development lot coverage? So you're on 515, right?
yep. There's nothing in here that speaks other than the special exceptions.
It says it's per lot size average lot, okay.
Right, it says per lot size average, not
Mhm.
planned development.
Right, right, yeah.
And so I don't see where it should be limited, but that's,
Mhm.
again, it's
Yeah.
the board's.
Well, you're the zoning administrator, you're the one who interprets
Now, that.
the ordinance.
So, yeah. Anybody have a different interpretation?
And I've gone through the definitions, I've gone through the plan development section, and there is no reference whatsoever in any of those definitions back to lot size averaging. So, you know, the plain language tells me
Right.
that, you know, I couldn't find any loop back where this could apply.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so, does everybody agree with David's interpretation? Or anybody not agree? Does anybody not agree with David's interpretation? Okay, so you've got an extra 10,000 square feet. Congratulations. Don't spend it all in one place. All
I
right,
mean, I don't quite mean to question your numbers, so.
so, anything else? Okay. Does the public have any comments? No public comments, no private comments, okay. Would somebody, like, well, I guess we have to go through these for,
You just, you wanna make sure that everything you want is on the plan.
so here we go. Strap yourselves in. Okay, so we've got the notice lists,
Yep.
A and B.
Yep.
We've got maps A to 10. We got those?
Yep.
Size per requirements,
Yep.
yeah. Scale no smaller than 100.
Yep.
Prepared, signed, certified by New Hampshire license.
Yep.
Complete boundaries, et cetera.
No.
There's no complete, that, the inset map does show, or the sketch plan shows, but I don't believe that the complete boundary's been resurveyed.
Okay. So, do we wanna waive that?
Yeah, that's fine.
It's been done.
Okay, so the complete, we're waiving that, because, why?
Because, this is a lot line adjustment and there's no change to the northern
No change to the existing
boundaries,
record.
so we don't really need to see that, we don't need to see that.
Okay. Existing and proposed lot lines, angles, dimensions, et cetera. You got all that?
Yep.
Okay, location of existing and proposed easements, et cetera, et cetera?
No.
No.
No, and,
I wanna see where the town's right of way goes. Yeah,
Go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
that's all.
okay, so, yeah,
I don't know, again, it'd be up to the board, but do you wanna see the easements for the, or all the other easements that are, you know, for example, the garage that will need an easement to, so they get to the backside to do repairs, all those easements that are going to be given to the,
the people decide.
Right.
I think so. I mean, I would.
my personal, you know,
It's
I,
in the record.
Yeah,
you know, my personal feeling is you should, just because it's protection for them.
Yes.
They may not know enough to ask, and they just say,
Right.
yeah, this is a good thing, sign it and not get the, I don't know, you know, I believe you will be, but just to make sure that the board does their due diligence and make sure that those
Okay.
easements are,
so we want easements shown, and Vicky wants right of way,
Shown on the map.
right at, town.
but do you want copies of the easements, the actual verbiage, or do you want just them shown on the plot? That's a, more of a question, not necessary part of the
Well, I
the
think this
checklist.
describes the use of the easements, you know, what they have here. It's just that it would be good to locate, you know, I'm only mainly concerned with the right of way, but I'm totally gonna show where the easement is for the garage maintenance, that's great.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing for the record.
And
Yeah, because we may not, when we're not here, somebody else is gonna.
does that
Right.
mean that then the fence easement would be centered on the location of the fence now?
fence is a maintenance agreement, not an easement, because it's, both sides are taking care of it, but.
Oh. Well, so what do you guys want indicated where the fence is, or how do you want that?
Well, they'll know where the boundary line is, right, so. I mean, you'll know where that is.
Question is,
anyway.
do we wanna have these easements shown on here?
Marked up.
And
I mean, do you feel like it's better for the record as we
I
go
feel it's
forward?
better for the record, just that way,
Yeah.
if there's ever a question, the planning board has said, these easements are required here. We
Yeah.
want them on the plan so that,
I mean, I think it's a good idea, and as you said, you're gonna be doing a lot of stuff in the next couple of years, so the more information, the better, I would say.
good, okay, let's show the easements on the plan.
Okay? All right, location of existing and proposed utilities, wells, blah, blah, blah.
there's some, but not everything.
And are the ones that aren't shown, do we want those? Oh, I guess my question to you would be why you showed some and not the others?
You see, leach field, that type of thing shown, I don't see any of the power coming in, any of the utilities coming in, any of the underground, if there's underground utilities.
So this section is existing and proposed utility wells, septic systems, buildings, drives, parking areas, stormwater drainage lines, drainage structures, and drainage ways.
So,
My question is, where does Clee get its power? Or where is that coming in? Is that something that you are bringing in through this section, and are you going to need an easement from them for that? So it'd be probably helpful to know those locations.
so show electrical, drainage.
Okay, so,
Leach field, approximate leach field is that the only one? On this scan?
On this side, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And the water lines, do you know where they are?
I know where the well is.
Yeah, well,
The well is.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But you don't know where the water lines are. The water lines run to,
I mean, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, at some point, you'll need, if you start new buildings and digging, you'll have to know where they are anyway, so.
yeah, I assume they run, to the building, but.
well, it could go around one building to get to the other. I don't know how they are.
yeah, I mean, this
so-
is just gonna help you going forward, because these are gonna need to be addressed, so.
But my other question would be, is, when you go to do the site plan,
Yeah, we would have it.
so, at some point in time, they're going to have to do it. Is it something that, my big concern is not knowing where the power comes in, the current utilities. My concern is that you may be bringing stuff in. Again, I worked in the Clee building for quite a few years as GDT, and this whole area was undeveloped at that time, and I believe everything came in from the road from that side. I'm just concerned that you may have power and things coming in that you want to have an easement for.
I mean, we said on the plan, talks about an easement for electrical utility, but I think the way it's described is actually backwards, because it's kind of hard to see, but I've looked from Route 10 and there's a utility pole. I think that it's south of the proposed property line, and I believe that goes underground to a transformer or box here, so it would actually be an easement from Area 1 in favor of Crossroads for the power lines across their property to get to us, I think.
Yeah, I guess my only concern is I'm listening is when I hear, I think, and I believe.
Right.
So,
Well, this is kind of that chicken or egg thing that I referred to earlier, like,
So
so what we would hope is that coming out of this is that now we can go back and document all these things specifically.
okay, so if we make, well, I guess,
A
this is my
revised
question to the
plan
board,
is
we can make it conditional, or we can wait.
Well, as David said, they're gonna have to do it for the site plan review.
I know, but we
But
want it now.
we wanna, we're approving this.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, the sooner the better, so, how does everybody feel about making it conditional upon having this information? Okay, everybody's good with that, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So look,
But you gotta do it sometime, so it's either now
Yeah,
or later,
right.
so it probably doesn't matter to you guys maybe.
no
The-
time,
The issue that, just sort of procedural issue we have is trying to pull together the 23 condominium owners is, takes a little bit of effort. And so if we can go back to them one more time for a final signature and say, this is what's happening, that's better than having to go back to them time and time again with, well, we needed this easement, we need to update the right of way. So that's why if we could get sort of a definitive list of everything, and then either we come back to you first and you sign off, and then we get the owners to approve, or we get something, you know, and you let David say it's met everything, we go to the owners and say, this is it. That's just procedurally would be, if we can go back to them one more time to finalize it, that's sort of,
Yeah, no, I understand, because, yeah, it's probably hard to, obviously hard to get them involved
So-
to do it.
But I think procedure, what would happen is, you know, the things the board would like to see on the plat, you'd go back, have you update the plat with, everything that the board wants to see. The board then can either do, say, tonight, conditionally, yes, we approve, or they can, with these things added, or they could say, we would like to see the plan again another night as soon as it's been updated, and then they can say yes or no. And then you can go to the condominium. I don't think that the, I don't think you, I'm not hearing you say that you wanna see these easements written out, they just wanna see where they're going to be.
okay.
And so that they're,
yeah,
and then when this plat is signed off on, there's an official record that here's where those easements intend to be. And if they're never executed, somebody can come back and say, hey, wait a minute, these were on the plan, these were part of your approval, you need to do them.
Okay.
And it gives the condo owners a little bit of a way of making sure that that happens. That's the,
all right, so we're gonna conditionally, theoretically, conditionally, we can conditionally require that. Okay, location of zoning district boundaries and area of each lot in each district.
I don't see zoning district boundary.
it's all, it's shown up in the sketch plan.
So that's a yes.
Yeah.
Okay, name and,
Oh,
well,
no.
what about for the shoreline setback? I think that's what the dotted line is, but that's not labeled. Is this line here?
The one, I wasn't,
Is it?
This is the shoreline setback to Hughes Brook,
It's
but
on this map.
the zoning is on the inside.
Right, so the line that goes through the cleave is the shoreline setback?
Yes.
Yeah, can that be labeled, please?
Sure.
I mean, otherwise take it out, but I just think it should be labeled.
now, just as a, when I was looking at this, this is the first subdivision for this lot. And
Mhm.
so they do qualify for the,
bonus.
not the bonus, it's not a bonus, the,
Freebie.
well, I hate the freebie, but basically what
They
you
don't
take away the overlay districts
Right.
for
Right.
the first lot. So that's, when I did all my calculations, I based it without, so I'm,
That's fine.
yeah. My only concern is, somewhere it should be noted that, if that's in there, that that's not taken into account for calculating the lot size.
You mean at the shoreline?
The shoreline, just, I don't wanna confuse things down the road for people to say, you know, either we can document it in the findings, but somewhere I'd like to see it
I'll
documented.
add it right here.
So is this line that goes off to the side here, is that the wetland setback, or it seems to bifurcate this shoreline district line, and then what's this?
Yes, that's a wetland setback line.
Okay, so
Right.
could that be labeled too,
Mhm.
please, just so we know what those are?
What's that one, Vicki?
So wetland setback
Okay.
line,
Okay. And, name and address of each abutter and fee.
Yes.
A final plat within 60 days, that's a presumptive yes, I would say. Since
I
we-
would
since we
leave it
can-
as
To come.
to come.
Provide a copy of each of the following most recent deed to the property if not on file with the town.
I have the most recent deeds.
Okay. All present or proposed easements, government, covenants, et cetera, in terms of the title matters.
It took me some digging to get all the current easements. They were not on file, but I did find them.
So you got all of them?
I do have the current ones.
Okay.
what other easements are there?
There's the conservation easement on this piece, and then there is a shoreland easement along Hughes Brook.
Is that with the
Oh,
Connecticut River watershed?
Yeah, this one's held by the Connecticut River Watershed Council, and the town holds the Hughes Brook one.
Well, maybe that could be sketched in also, and aren't they called the Connecticut River
Yeah.
Conservancy?
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
right?
They are now.
And did they still have that
They still-
easement?
Yes, they
I thought
still have
were
that
gonna
easement.
give them all away.
They are in the process of doing that,
Mhm.
but they have not yet for this one.
Mhm.
Is my understanding that it's going to go to the Upper Valley Land Trust,
Mhm.
but something, I'm not quite sure what has to go to town meeting, but I've been researching for this and several others in town
Mhm.
for the select
Isn't
board.
that on the warrant?
It is.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so, we'll want the conservation easements shown.
You don't have that one, right? That's Hughes Brook shoreline.
Yeah.
Okay. And then B, a deed restriction, yes.
Well, typically you put this paragraph on the plat.
Right.
Mhm.
So I'll ask that, I can get you this, I can send you this wording in an email so that you
So-
can, it just basically says you're going to make this part and parcel with this, and it's not, does not constitute a separate lot.
So I'll put that to come also.
Yeah.
All right, dimensional conformance, you must prove that you're not making any conforming lot, non-conforming, I'm sorry, you are not making any conforming lot non-conforming, or any non-conforming lot less conforming.
That's where you would ask for the,
Right,
so, that would be a no at the moment.
but that's gonna be provided.
That will be provided.
Can you just give us some direction on how you would like us to provide that? What I can tell you is that in 2001, there was a planning board decision which allocated lot coverage between area 1 and area 2. And so Crossroads has accurate calculations of actual lot coverage for area 2 versus what the planning board approved, and that's where I said there was an issue because somebody used the wrong number, too low a number, so the area 2 piece is out of conformance. I have no way of knowing what exists actually on area 1, except that I have no reason to believe that the numbers that Bain gave the planning board in 2001 aren't accurate as
Well,
far as lot coverage for that. So I know
Well-
I know what the planning board approved, and I know what Bain said is on lot, area 1, but is
So
it?
how did this one get wrong then, or, you know?
It got wrong because there was something in the amount of driveway area was miscalculated.
Okay, so mistakes are made, fine, I don't want these guys to be left in a non-conforming situation.
What I would
That's-
suggest is taking the areas of the buildings, the areas of the driveways that were approved back in, that was 2005, but that's,
There's a 2001
or
decision.
2000, well, either, wherever that, you know, the numbers that came from that should still, unless, I don't believe there's been any more development
Right.
here. So those numbers should be correct for what's in existence. You're changing lot 55, you're taking out 4.07 acres. But, so what you would do is then recalculate lot 55 based on taking this section out. And then compare what your calculated lot coverages, building footprints, and make sure that they are compliant with what,
Yeah, the new acreage.
right. It should be because you're adding, basically adding acreage from this up here from area B. Shouldn't be a problem, but I think that it is an exercise that needs to be done.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
And can you make sure that if people have put in decks and things like that, that they're included, so that it's not just based on what the development was back then, but it's what it is now?
Is that something that we can find in,
Yeah, there's, you can look through, there's the section that has all the,
all the applications?
well, all the files for each condo, and we can just look and see if there's been any,
Any amendments since?
Any additions to
2001?
Yeah, just people put on decks, they put on stoops, they put on sheds, they put on garages,
Okay.
so just, and
All right, and then finally, the board may waive the requirement of a perimeter survey of the entire parcel.
Yep. Do we need to do that again? Did we do that already?
Yeah,
Let's do it again.
Okay,
Same reason.
I'd like to waive
Waive
the
it.
requirement for the full perimeter survey, because we don't need those details on the northern portion.
you waive the fact, having the full boundary, and then this is just waiving them,
Okay.
having them go back and do a full perimeter survey.
Okay, so, we've got the lot line, the checklist done. So just going through it, we have a waiver of a number, that exactly what we're talking about. We're asking for easements, to be shown, including, the town right away. And we're asking for, the electrical drainage, water lines, et cetera, to be shown. We want the label, we want shoreline district and wetland setback labeled. And we're noting that that information will not be used for overlay calculations because of the first subdivision issue. You can add the conservation easements, and up-to-date information to be provided about the dimensional conformance. And that's it.
Do we need anything about, is Mike Monday?
To be sure that I don't know, wherever the easement goes is where he wants it to go.
What?
You
Yeah,
mean the
it sound-
town right away,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so, I don't know.
it sounds like maybe the fire department put that gate there before, if they did, then that's fine.
That's what Mike told me.
Yeah,
That's what he wanted.
yeah.
I would just get a letter from Mike saying that he is happy with the easement and the getting the
So,
access.
could we have the gate just shown on here then? And then the area around it showing, town right of way or whatever, so that the gate doesn't get turned into a brick wall?
So that's to get to area one, rather than coming in the driveway from 10, in case they need to get in from.
Using the crossroads land as that and driveway as access.
Yeah, as another, I mean, they already have
Right,
access.
so are you guys gonna get rid of this driveway anyway?
that's another date with you guys
I
in the future.
understand, but, you know, you also need to talk to our fire people,
I know,
if
well,
this is
part-
actually gonna be,
Part
Yeah,
of
we-
that conversation relates to whether we might keep that driveway only for emergency vehicle access, so that the fire truck can hook up to the dry hydrant over on the pond view and pull into the old Crossroads driveway and pump water to Area 1. That's the thinking, so that's
Yep.
coming down the pike
Yep,
at some
yep,
point, so to
yep.
speak.
All right, so we're saying that all those things I read are gonna be necessary. Does anybody wanna make a motion about this lot line?
that is complete, given all the things we've noted that still need to come in,
Yeah,
I will.
okay, there's a motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor? You vote also. You're voting against?
I'll vote with you. I just felt like for clarity, it'd be better to have it, but
Have what?
to have it all done and then approve it.
Oh, well,
I'm okay.
does anybody wanna,
Yeah, but then they'd have to go to does that mean they'd have to go
No.
to the condominium?
No, they would be able to make the changes, and then the board can continue the hearing, you know, when everything, you can have the changes, and then come back and
It just ensures completeness. But I don't know, I've only been doing this for 2 weeks.
Okay, so if we just,
So excuse me, I'm not trying to make it hard.
Well,
but-
if they make the changes, David will see them, you'll see them, right? I mean, it'll come to you.
there's a difference, because we just approved, or, I don't know, did we just approve?
well,
a
no,
complete
because
application?
we didn't finish the vote.
Okay, because the clock starts, if we've got a completed application and we've got, I think, 65 days that we need to make a decision. So I don't know, can this be done in 65 days? Well, it's- Yeah, okay. Well, that's not a problem.
That means
Um,
we have another meeting though, right?
We would have to continue this to a date and time certain.
or you could say that it's incomplete, and you'll come back for, and then continue it to a date and time, so it doesn't need to be renoticed.
Right.
And then,
Yeah. So
So-
you guys have a time frame, you have a time frame?
We wanna keep the ball rolling.
Right. But I mean,
It's
having a
like-
meeting wouldn't be a disaster then.
I don't see a problem coming back.
In a month, do you think? you
No,
have it
but
all?
if we have to start all over, like if you're gonna say the application is incomplete, isn't that
no, all it
make it
does.
harder than saying just a continuation of this hearing, like, till we
No,
can?
they actually do both. They'd say the application is incomplete, it needs to have the information updated. You would update the information, the board would continue to a specific date. You would come back on that date, give the board the updated information. and-
Hopefully you give it to us like the week before, so
Yeah,
we can take a
yeah,
look at it, so
definitely
we don't
give
have
us
to
the
go
week
through this
before.
all again,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then they would be able to, if everything is as they want, they could approve that at that meeting. So you wouldn't be reapplying, it would just be, it would basically be a continuance. The problem be, if they say the application is complete tonight, then they have to make a decision in 65 days.
And if we weren't satisfied with the information we had, we would have to
Deny the application.
deny the application, and then you would have to start all over. So in one sense, we might be better off if we just continue it, say,
If you say it's incomplete and then continue, you can complete it, get all the information together, and then the board can make a decision. They'll say they'll deem the application complete, they have 65 days to make that decision, but typically the board has in the past
So-
made those decisions very quickly after all the information is there.
So how does the board feel about this? We know,
Yeah, and I'd encourage you not to be overly influenced by, because
No, you're-
I'm just learning.
you're a member of the board,
But I
you
just-
raised an issue, and I think it's a valid issue to consider, so I'm asking the input of the board.
All right, so the two options would be,
Either a conditional acceptance as complete, that would start the clock
tonight,
tonight, or saying it's incomplete and doing a continuance.
to them if
So-
they think they can get everything in. I don't wanna have to bump up against, I mean, the 65 days, if we're bumping up against it, then we can both mutually agree to extend that time, and that's totally fine. So does it make sense for us to say, let's meet in a month, and you guys will have information to us in 3 weeks so that we can review it, and then meet with you again in a month? That puts pressure on Rod to get that, and you guys
There's not
have to
a
have
lot
your
to do
easements,
here.
okay? Well, then, is a month, then we might as well just,
It'll probably be cleaner that way.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it won't hold you guys up, probably.
Well, I don't think it'll hold them up because we're gonna need that information, and we're really gonna want that information to go forward regardless, so.
Right.
But can I just ask one question? So, it seems from my perspective, like the board that's here tonight, understands what the second part of this application is trying to get at in terms of the lot coverage, dimensional controls for this enlarged lot 56.
Right.
So if we come back in a month, we follow your advice and continue this, or that you decide the application is incomplete and we start over in a month, let's say. If it's a different group that
Well-
doesn't see that logic, are we at risk that
Yeah.
the dimensional
There's-
controls could be
the-
It
less
won't be a
than?
different.
No, hold on.
Well, there's we.
we haven't taken any action about that anyway.
Yeah,
All we're doing is saying is, do we have a complete application? That's
Yeah,
all we're talking
that
about, we're not
hasn't
talking
been,
about an
that
approval
hasn't
for
been
anything
officially
yet.
addressed, that's just
Right.
been reviewed in
Right.
the,
Right.
with questions. And in terms of the board, who's ever here, even people who are here tonight could, you know, change their minds about something or have a different perspective, but that really hasn't been addressed in an official context.
Okay, that's fine. You know, we wanna do what you guys wanna do, I just, you know, that's the thing that's really, like, obviously.
Well, I guess my answer to that is we've superficially addressed that.
We just gave you 10,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So are you?
I mean, that's not looking bad, but we haven't officially addressed
No,
it.
we haven't.
So that conversation and the deliberation of the board is yet to come, so that's
Okay.
sort of neither here nor there.
Okay, so would it be your preference that you rule that
Well, we're
application
gonna-
incomplete?
We're gonna vote. So, does somebody wanna make a motion, and it should be you, out of respect for your input?
Idea?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'll make a motion that we go ahead and just continue the application and contingent upon.
Leave it at, that it's incomplete?
yes,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, so that's my
Okay,
motion.
do we have a second? Tim seconds, all those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, so there we have it. So
So you want to continue to a specific?
Yes, let's do a specific date.
It'll be the 28th of March, that's a month from now.
Sorry. Yep, 28th of March is a month, so.
So presumably, at that meeting, if we deem it complete, then we can vote.
Everything's there.
Yeah,
Everything's there.
if
we can
everything's
vote
Well,
there.
to
actually,
approve it or
if
not
we deem it
approve
complete, we've got 65 days.
Right, but we
Oh,
could do it that
we
meeting.
could,
We hopefully will, but,
Yeah.
you know, take action that night.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting at. So if all goes well, March 28th will be done. I mean, your lot line adjustment will be approved.
well, you can't,
No, we
let's
don't.
not say,
No, I'm just saying if, or it could be.
it's possible that
It's
it could
possible,
be.
that's what I'm saying.
So from, notice to butters and getting the application,
Yeah.
the re-app, what do we have
No,
to?
you do not have to do anything other than update this and get me copies as soon as you have it updated to get to the board. Because they've done a continuance, the notice still stands.
Okay.
You know, so there is no need to renote, that's one of the
All you
beautiful
have
things
to
about
do
continuance.
is address the issues that we talked about tonight.
Okay.
And then it's, you know, if there was another meeting tomorrow, in which there isn't, but if that were possible to do by tomorrow, it would just continue from then. That's nothing else, and correct me if I'm wrong, David,
No, that-
nothing else really changes.
Okay.
All right,
So just asking, just to
if they wanted, they could come back in 2 weeks if they had it done, right?
I wouldn't see why not,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's up to you.
I mean, if that helps, it makes you,
If you could get it in 2 weeks, you could come in 2 weeks.
You
Well,
would,
but then that means
you would
have to-
prefer to have more than a little bit of time to review.
Right, I think
Yeah,
that,
we need at least 2 or 3 days, ideally.
Yeah.
2 or 3 days.
It'd be good to get it in, what, a week,
because I have to either have them come in or send it out
Yeah.
in mail, and so it takes a couple of days for it to get to them when I get it.
Or
So,
can we
first.
get, if we have, if we take the notes, and make all the changes, are we allowed to run it past David to see if he thinks we've done everything?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
That's why
And
it's there.
David is here to help you through the process, of course.
Yeah, absolutely, and
All
I'm
right.
quite happy to do that.
Okay.
And especially running through the confirmation about the compliance with the parcel to the south. That would be great to have you guys have had plenty of time to think about it and then walk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, this has a really complex history with so many moving parts that, and your excellent narrative covers a lot of stuff, and because this is gonna be theoretically continuing to
We don't wanna be
be an
compounding
area
errors.
that's developed, we want future boards to be informed, so getting these things addressed, especially given what you're saying is the future of this place is important.
Okay.
So Rod can have it done by.
You can have it done by tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
I have total confidence.
Area
Rod.
one is
Yeah.
probably the biggest thing you have to do,
tough to get
repeat your files.
But getting the information about proving that you're not making any conforming lot.
That's the hard part.
Yeah, that's, I
Or more
imagine
work.
that's a challenge.
That'll be a little bit of work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right,
Now, just as a matter of form,
yeah,
we had split this up to two different
Right.
hearings, one for the subdivision and then one for site plan to update the dimensional controls. So you still need to close this hearing, start the site plan, and then probably continue the site plan
Right.
also,
Okay.
but just as a,
So, let's close this hearing. And let's open the site plan hearing, and I would suggest continuing that.
Sounds good, I'll second it
Okay.
until March 28th.
Also, March 20th. Oh,
Can
yeah.
I ask a question about that?
Of course you can.
So, I'm sure you know that the site plan application requirements have a long list of materials that are required, and in the narrative, I addressed the fact that the nature of this request is very limited in scope. It really just is dealing with the dimensional controls, and we expect to come back before this board with the big giant application for what I would call normal site plan review once we have a building design. So do you anticipate it being an issue when you go through that checklist, and Crossroads hasn't supplied, most of the things on the site plan review checklist? Because I didn't know another way to get that issue in front of this board about just looking at the dimensional controls going forward.
Well,
So will we waive it? I don't know, do we need any, it depends. If we have enough information to make the decision,
right,
then we can waive everything else that we don't need.
Okay. Nothing on that dimensional controls relates to the police department, for example, or the fire department. So do we need a sign off from Mike Hensley or Mike Mundy for what you guys deciding dimensional controls? That's on the checklist you'll have to go through, and when that hearing is continued.
right. We'll have to go through it. I guess, I don't wanna put the board in a position where we tell you something and then we go through that and we realize like, oh no, look, we really need this, but I think, David can give you guidance.
I was able to look at this and do my own calculations to get those numbers, the numbers that I got. I didn't find I needed anything else, so again, I can't speak for the board, but for me, this was sufficient information. But again, I can't speak for.
Can you update this analysis so that we have the correct?
Yes, I have that on the-
numbers and then again with the.
I will make sure all the numbers are updated
Yep,
and
yep, good.
Okay, so did we have a vote yet?
No, you did not.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to.
So you made the motion, Vicky seconded. you
Okay,
speak
I would
off.
like everybody who's in favor of continuing the site plan review,
March 28th.
March 28th, date certain. All those opposed? Okay, we're set. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
David, here's the
Thank you.
copious notes. Okay. We have two sets of minutes. So, let's do the, oh gosh.
Do you want copies? I have. John, did you want a copy or do you have?
Yeah, I have it. The great problem is finding it, but it's got to be yours. Can't have gotten far.
I'll share since you were so nice to share.
Oh, here it is.
Oh, thank
I
you.
need my.
Okay.
You need another, I have other copies of the minutes.
Okay, so on the, let's do the older one first. So on page 2 of the 11019, bottom of the, what it is, bottom of the first or second paragraph, I can't tell. It says, there was no reason to send applicant. I would say send the applicant.
This is January 10th.
110. Did you see that spot? Page 2?
Page 2,
At the bottom of the first clump there, no reason to send applicant.
oh,
It should be send the applicant.
instead of this applicant.
Yeah,
I was looking too far down.
okay.
No, it's the top, it's right at the top.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I had an older
Yeah, that's
copy. That's all I have.
I had a question more than anything. On the first page, I guess third paragraph from the bottom, where the whole thing was John stated the motivation was to clarify the possibilities and significantly expand dimensions available. I just had a question. I wondered whether we wanted to explain, put any more explanation in there, like i.e. the very small lots would be limited to unreasonably small buildings.
I would say add any language that you like, and if the board agrees with it, so be it.
Well, that was just a note I made. I haven't really figured
Well,
out exact language.
Now is the time.
Well, I don't, do people think we should need to add any more? That was a question, really.
Well, I guess it would be fine with me if we added language. Now, the way, the minutes are not verbatim records, they're just quick summaries, so.
Right, so maybe it's not necessary, but, it says the expanded maximum dimensional limitations take into account what seems reasonable and consistent with the criteria in this section. I don't know, maybe that says enough.
It's a,
What do you think?
It's fine with me, whatever it says. I don't think we need, this isn't our philosophy or,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What John says on March 5th about the zoning amendment is really what goes,
what John said.
yeah.
Okay, well, as I said, it was just a question.
Okay,
Whether
so
people wanted
would
to-
you want to add language or no?
No, I think,
Okay,
it's fine.
so I'd like to make a motion to approve these minutes as amended. And is there a second?
Second,
All those in favor? All those opposed?
I'm gonna abstain,
Okay,
since I was.
we're not there, okay. So we have a 3 in favor. And that's that. Okay, and then the current, or the most recent minutes, any comments on those?
I do have copies if you want to show paper copy.
All right, are we
Just
good?
time- just
Yeah,
time
I
to-
can't
Are we good? I mean,
I didn't
I
have
hope
any-
you two are having a good time over there, but we'd like to
I
get
never
these,
get this
we'd like
far.
to keep things moving along. Does anybody have a problem with
No,
these
I
minutes?
don't.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as written. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay.
I think we'll have you take minutes from now on, because yours get approved without any changes
Because
whatsoever.
they're so short.
Well, that's maybe my
Well,
problem.
You weren't here, that's why they were so short. Okay, I'd like to move on, please.
We're having a really important
I
conversation.
know, I hope you can pull yourselves away. So, David, could you tell us what the issue is with Dowds?
Yes, Wayne Pike came to me and I asked me a question, and I gave him an answer that he didn't particularly like, so he asked me to come to the planning board and ask them, because it is your purview. They are considering putting in an underground cold storage area as a separate structure. And they wanted to know whether it was going to need to go to site plan review or not. My answer was, of course, yes.
So Dave, my question is it all underground, or is it a building that's on top of the ground?
He did not give me enough details. There has to be an
There are
Are they
entrance.
putting a
And
tunnel
there's-
from?
There
No,
are
there
three
has to be-
lights and steps, okay?
There's gotta be some sort of entrance that is going to be above ground, which, because they have already used up all their lot coverage and had to get 2 separate variances for lot coverage, they would need to go to the zoning board for a 3rd variance also for any additional, so.
Because my thought was if it was a tunnel that was coming out of the cell, basement or something, then it wouldn't really be covering any lot coverage, but if there's an actual, gonna have to be some kind
It
of
was
building.
my understanding that it was going to be set away from the inn,
And they won't get to it from the existing cell.
right, they will
or
have to
whatever.
go from a,
Go outside to
outside.
get to it?
yes.
So maybe,
How do our emergency service people feel about that? Is there a second means of egress and all that kind of thing?
I have no idea how
Yeah, I
that
mean,
will.
I don't know what the requirements are in terms of safety.
It would, the intent is to have, be building it out of 2-ton cement blocks.
Just dig a hole and put the blocks in.
Yeah, that was what he is,
This is for food storage for the kitchen?
yes.
so this would not be underneath the existing building?
No, this would be a separate
Yes.
That's
structure.
my, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is taking up lawn space or parking or?
Again, he
vegetation?
didn't have all the details, and so
Yeah,
it's hard to.
definitely
Well, if you talk to them again, ask them if there's any way they could make it so they can access it.
Well, I mean,
The
point of it is,
yeah.
Right,
We
we've
need
got
to-
changes to the site, and
Yeah.
so therefore,
That-
because
Yes.
in order to get there, they need to remove vegetation, parking, lawn.
Yeah,
And so, and if they're going in, they probably have to have a new light, and
Okay.
there's gonna be steps or
So-
a ramp, or I don't even know.
And-
Yeah, if there was.
And like I say, if there is any above-ground structure that takes up space, that has to go to the ZBA.
Well, and how are they gonna drain it? I mean.
okay.
you know,
Well,
I-
so-
there- yes, I'm-
I don't think we need to
Okay.
No,
spend any more
It's a
time.
great idea.
So,
He asked if I would bring it to the board,
Yep.
he didn't like my answer that, yes, he'd have to go to site plan review,
Okay, so
and
that
so.
was your answer.
Yes, that was my
Yeah.
answer, and
all right,
so.
so we done with that?
well, I think just to solidify that we support his
Yes.
initial
I
findings.
thought that was the,
It was pretty sound.
that was the clear.
Yeah, I mean, I still feel though, if they did it, I mean, this is all hypothetical, if they did it so that they accessed it from the existing.
But even if they,
Still are.
first of all, how could they do that?
Well, I don't know,
It's
I'm
still
just saying,
a-
if
well,
they
it's
They would
did.
still have to tell us how they're gonna do it.
It still would have, I believe, would have to
No,
go
but
to
I mean,
site
I'm just saying it
plan.
wouldn't, if it didn't put any more,
What's the
But-
roof gonna
but
be?
you
What's it
have-
supporting?
I mean, even if-
On top of it? I mean.
You
yeah,
have,
there
we,
won't be any roof. They'll just
it's a
put
change to the site. How could we not
Well-
see it?
There has to be a roof.
Yeah, okay,
It has to be something.
I mean, even
whether
if they
it's-
put it underneath, they lifted the existing building and they put it
okay. Well,
underneath.
but that wouldn't be adding, all I'm saying is it wouldn't be adding
Well,
any
but you're
footprint
just
to the lot.
addressing that
I'm
little,
just a-
you're just
okay.
addressing that little
But that's,
piece of the
but that,
puzzle.
what is the why they have to go to the ZBA, right?
No, well, the question wasn't whether they have to go to the ZBA, the question was, do they need
Would it-
site plan review?
Right,
Yes or no?
okay,
That's the question.
okay.
Yeah.
But there's still a,
Right,
there's
you
whether they
didn't-
have to go to ZBA or not, so.
That's David's call.
And
Yeah,
when
okay.
they submit a plan, I can look at a plan
Mhm.
They decide.
and then.
So this is just asking, this is addressing the general question that David was asked. We don't have, David does not have a plan, we don't have a plan.
Right.
So it's a general answer to a general question. All right, we done with that?
Mhm.
Oh, good. Okay, next,
That's new business.
we have,
Right,
no, I have my
You're out of
own.
order, John.
I am,
John, as the chairman, is allowed to.
I have that prerogative.
Modify the agenda.
Let's go to the select, well, I shouldn't call it the select board, but the zoning amendment that the select board has asked us to consider. I would like to, people to give their comments so that our representative can bring it back for discussion. Is that okay? So anybody have comments on that? You have no comments? Because if you have them, you should give them.
Well, yeah, I guess my general comment would be, it seems like it's a solution looking for the problem.
Okay.
I mean, I
Vicki,
don't think there is an issue.
do you have any
I
comments?
don't wanna be negative.
You know what, that's never stopped you in the past, so if you have comments, it's appropriate for you to give them now.
I don't feel like this should be made in the absence of other things that we might be doing with housing in the rest of the town. So I think it should wait and be considered with a package of housing changes that we might make.
Okay? That's it?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a good specific thing to go for right now.
I guess the thing that jumps out at me is that it's started with this, that there's an existing problem of enforcement, which, number one, I'm not really sure there is an existing problem with enforcement. I don't quite understand what the problem is. And I'd like to know how many Route 10 properties there are where it's felt that there are enforcement properties that would be addressed by this. That's my biggest question. How many are there? And
I think there's two, but.
yeah, so I guess this is two parts.
There's a few,
I think there's two.
Whatever, I'd like to know, since that's really the driver of this, how many there are, what the enforcement issues are. And beyond that, it's to have such a major zoning change based on an enforcement issue. I mean, changing planning and zoning in a major way because of what are perceived as enforcement issues on Route 10 that I suppose have existed for 30 years seems odd. I don't think that's the way to go about planning and zoning changes, so I'll just stop there.
Yeah, and then I guess I would also say that this part they want to be deleted, that the remainder of the lot would be, the undeveloped part would be put in some sort of easement. I don't agree with that at all. I mean, that seems like
I mean,
it should not be
basically,
deleted.
another issue is that if the town somehow, maybe in the feedback we get from the town or in some other ways, feels that having planned development available all along Route 10 is a good thing, that would be obviously something we should look at, but.
I think it was sort of Eric's point that he made.
Right, but to this point, there's been no indication from anybody
Right.
that this is something that the town wants.
John,
Yes?
could, I know something about some of the history. What's the current topic or the current state of the discussion here? Planned development on Route 10.
Oh, could you give, you haven't seen the
I haven't seen this
zoning amendment?
most recent.
I'd have to go make.
All right,
go make
so,
a
so
copy.
what it changes is,
I'm gonna go make a copy for Rich.
it would basically, very roughly put, would allow planned development all along the Route 10 corridor.
North and south of
Yeah.
the common district.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding.
Okay.
That's why I really want to see what we're doing with housing before we make some kind of a change like that. Are we gonna put more emphasis on our downtown, in the village?
Yeah, I
You know,
mean.
coming out of the study, the LCDC study, if what we should be doing is promoting small residential developments, that's maybe what we should be doing, not this. So I don't think it's an opportune time to go on a direction when we're focused on something else.
Yeah, it seems sort of like pulled out of the blue.
John, would
Yes,
this
sir.
be a good time for public comment?
It's as good a time as any.
Okay, good. I did think about this in the context of an earlier draft, and I think, so I have a lot, I have my note here, so, the select board is
Oh,
proposed,
are you gonna be reading? Okay,
yeah, it could be.
okay.
The select board, my understanding is they wanted to see the development of more affordable homes in town. And I think, it's my belief that the current ordinance makes it difficult to develop anything except single-family homes on what amount to fairly large lots. And that's the tradition here in Lyme, but it makes it incredibly difficult to develop anything that's of a modest price. I'll skip
So
that.
are you referring to the select board of a year, more than a year past?
No, I was just talking about, I sent this note to Rusty back in around the 2nd of January, beginning of this year. So,
So, was that in connection with this?
I know Rusty was thinking about this back in that time frame. So this.
Of 2018?
No, this year, January
2019.
of 2019.
Oh, so you were involved with this in?
Right, I mean,
Okay.
Rusty, I know Rusty was talking about this
Okay.
back then. So I think it's difficult because of the single-family homes only allowed on fairly large parcels with expensive land. It's just not possible to build
I'm gonna
inexpensive
stop
housing.
you just for a second.
Yeah.
So, just to clarify, it wasn't the select board discussion, because this wasn't discussed at the select board in the last few weeks,
Okay.
period. So you and Rusty may have had a conversation.
Mm-hmm. So I'm, thank you, Dave.
Because that's not, that wording hasn't been discussed in the last few weeks at the select board with respect to this change.
So, my understanding is, I'm supportive of the notion of allowing planned development up and down Route 10. If that's germane to the discussion now, I have a couple more things that I want to say in support of it.
Speak away.
And whether,
I would
whether
just,
it's.
I'd just ask you to keep it, you know.
Yeah, no, I'll,
Efficient.
thank you. I think that allowing planned development would, in the rural district, would go a long way toward meeting the master plan's goal of allowing a diversity of housing types suitable for people in a broad range of economic circumstances. I can send this to you, David, if you don't want to.
No, I'm actually just going to,
All right.
it's going to be a short saying,
Okay.
that you were discussed in your support of it.
I talked about expensive land, makes it hard to develop anything. A planned development lets you lower costs because it allows multiple units on a parcel. It allows multiple buildings on a parcel as well. It doesn't have constraints on the clustering or placements of buildings, and it grants the full footprint, lot coverage, and gross floor area. I think the last thing is that I think this would make it easier for Lyme to defend against a potential workforce housing suit. The RSA says that every municipality, blah, 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 shall provide reasonable and realistic opportunities for the development of workforce housing, including rental multifamily housing. And so the ordinance has to allow workforce housing in a majority of the land that's zoned residential.
Has to allow it, yes.
Pardon me?
Has to allow it,
Has to allow it, yes.
which it does.
Well, I
It's a
don't-
very complicated, I'm very familiar with workforce, as you know.
Yeah,
Very familiar with
Mhm.
that, and
right,
there are a lot of parts of it, and if you cherry pick it, you
Well-
can make certain points.
right. So I can send this longer note to the board if that's helpful, but I would support that.
Well, that's, okay, so you support it, and you were involved in the discussions about it. And again, I would say that with a master plan, there are things that if you pick things out,
Mhm.
it's,
Well-
can be kind of cherry picked. But your support is noted,
Mhm.
and did anybody have?
So if we're really talking about workforce housing, then it would be with a limitation on the sales price and the folks who could live there? Is that what you're?
I mean, workforce
what you're-
housing, the current limit, as far as I know, is
269,500.
269,500, yeah.
Right.
Which would be, still would be.
So
in
that would
many
be the
cases.
cap for sale, and
Mhm.
and only income eligible people would live there? Or
No.
could anybody live there?
No, those are market rates, but
Okay.
the ordinance needs to allow the development of houses at that price
Well,
point.
we have an existing article before the board that has a different approach. That's the senior housing article, and it includes incentives for the inclusion of workforce housing. So that's another approach.
Mhm.
And just leave it at that, unless somebody has any other.
Well, I guess to speak to that, senior housing, clearly a good thing.
But no, I'm not, it's not the senior housing I'm addressing the incentives for workforce housing in that article. Have you read have you read that article?
Yes.
Okay.
Would that require that people, all the people that live there be senior?
No, that article, I
Yeah.
think as it's as it's written now, which is just a proposal,
Mhm.
I believe, actually, it's a while, I'm not sure. I don't think it requires, I think you could have,
Single person is
yeah,
62
you could
or
have,
whatever.
you could have workforce housing, non-senior.
Okay.
And, no, in fact, I'm sure that that's,
Okay.
Or for the work.
yeah, for the workforce housing,
Mhm.
component would not be senior,
Okay,
not required to be senior.
okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the lighting, does anybody have any problems with the lighting as we, no, not here. Yeah. And David, I wanted to get your input, because you weren't here, on the lighting, you know, what we wrote up, whether.
I'm still trying to catch up and have not fully gone
Oh,
through it,
okay.
so that's,
Okay, well, just based on what everybody, kind of input that I received, I threw that in and
I thought,
divided it up as if it were gonna be inserted
I
into
thought it
the
was-
site plan.
that's what you were
And-
tasked to do.
Right, and so, and then the other thing I found was this guidelines for good exterior lighting plan, which is put out by the Dark Sky Society. And I thought that, you know, some of these pages might be good to pass out, along with the site plan application, maybe not the whole thing. You know, we don't want lighting plan submissions necessarily, but maybe these 3 pages with the pictures, and, you know, while we wanna have good exterior lighting plans, so that people understood some of the background, because I think these are pretty simple, and, you know, it talks about, you know,
But
the
is,
cut
is,
sheet.
is that as part of the,
No, this would be handed out along with our site plan application, so if they have to do a lighting plan, this is.
they have
just
guidance?
Some background.
And David has
Yeah.
material.
that's, I love to have material to give people, and they love to
Right.
get it because it gives them,
Right,
you know, a lot of times people are like, I have no idea where to even start.
Right.
And so having any type of,
yeah, so that'd be
Yeah,
great.
it's a good
Yeah,
idea.
so I just had
So not
found
the
that.
whole thing maybe, but just.
Not the whole thing, and then, you know, I thought that this little brochure, that was done for people in Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, was also just a handy little thing, and, you know, it could be modified for Lyme as a handout, because it's not many pages, it's well illustrated, and, you know, I think, you know, we'd have to change some names and all that in there, but it might be easy, you know, an easy thing, and, you know, put a picture of lighting and Lyme, you know, instead of, and we certainly do have light trespass from the street lights, so I could take a picture of my house, and, you know, but if we wanted to do something like this, instead of like the 3-page handout, it might be just a
Well,
supplement.
I think it'd be a good idea to have materials available for David.
Right,
The more the merrier,
Yeah, definitely.
within reason, because, well, for obvious reasons.
well, no, it's just helpful for people to understand, you know, why we even care, and, you know, reading the regulations, people get offended, a handout is a friendly thing, and here, you know,
Okay.
here's some information about it.
Well, I
without,
think,
you know, telling
I
them
think we're all
exactly what to
agreed
do.
that's a great
So
thing.
That's
And
why
thank you.
I found those, and thought they were useful.
But my, I guess, line of questioning is, are people ready to move forward with these lighting,
Yeah, so this would be inserted in our.
Site plan
Right.
in the site plan
regulations.
review as Vicky
Right,
organized it?
yeah.
The,
This would be taken out.
Definitions go.
the definitions go with the definitions, and the other parts
Yeah,
go with it.
I think it's good.
All right, so do we want to take this to the town for a hearing?
Well, we just have a hearing here, yeah.
Yeah,
mean,
so I mean, do we wanna
we have
move,
time.
Yeah.
this, okay?
do you wanna wait until after town meeting?
Yeah, I think we should definitely wait till after town meeting. But,
Maybe have it in April, if we don't have cases. I mean, we need to get Crossroads finished.
so what
Late
I,
April would be better for me, 'cause,
Okay.
my wife has to get some surgery done April 2nd, so.
anything major?
Disc problems,
Oh.
and so I'm gonna be out that week.
Okay.
And then.
So let's do it in April, just make a note not to let us, because this is the sort of thing that can get lost in the haze.
Yeah, why don't I?
Do we have other applications that you know are coming to us?
There's nothing that I know of.
Okay, hopefully that Latham will come and we can get that storage building approved.
Okay, so just make sure that you.
And what I'm gonna make myself a note to actually take what you've done
Yeah.
and incorporate it in the actual site plan regulations, so that you have something to work off of, put the definitions in the definition section, and
You mean like a
An updated version of the site plan.
Yeah, but not until it's passed.
Well, you wanna see what it,
Oh, you mean just as for our use?
For your use.
Oh, sure, that'd be
What it
great,
would
that'd be
actually
great,
look like,
yeah.
I gave it to you in Word, right?
yes,
You can just click.
yep, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll have a hearing in April. Okay,
Can I ask Vicki just one question, just
of course.
to remind? So when we talk about the exceptions for the luminaries for public,
Luminaries, yeah.
the maximum height, so is that for someone coming onto a public highway or the public highway itself? Is this, I mean, most of this is for development of residential, commercial stuff
Right.
off of the highway.
Right, we don't regulate what the, state or the town puts up, so it would be lighting right at the intersection between a driveway and, it would be in the public right of way probably, or
So that's what
close
it's
to it,
intended to
yeah.
cover,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, to provide illumination.
Well, that was sort of to my point, was that, for like Route 10 and the state and things like that,
We're
we
not.
can't.
We're not,
Yeah, we
Okay.
can't
So this is
Authority.
meant for someone if they're gonna put.
it's an entrance light.
Well, it'd be only for
For-
businesses that go to site plan review or multifamily
Okay.
conversions
Okay.
that are,
Okay.
No,
those
no,
are the things that are
No, private.
site plan review
I'm good.
looks at.
Thank you.
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
Although it'd be really good to get people to start not having spotlights all over the place and have them be sharp cut off. And, just like having a lighting thing that was not only for site plan, but, just in Lyme, we like our dark night sky, and, you can have a spotlight that actually shines down and
yeah,
across
but
your
on
yard.
a practical basis, this is for site plan.
Yes, yeah, that's all we're working on.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
One of the reasons for rifles. One of the
subdivision,
reasons.
what?
I'd say it's one of the reasons for rifles, that's why.
Oh, okay,
Just
okay,
because I
okay,
can see
let's-
my spotlight see fairly from
Can
line,
let's move along.
which you probably can, but that's.
Okay, subdivision regulations, that was on, I know we still have to add dwelling unit for the consistency. That's one thing. And then Vicky had given us
Oh
that,
my gosh, that was so long ago.
Yeah.
The design review stuff?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, Do you still wanna do that?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Well, if we're gonna have a lot of PRDs to,
Because didn't we decide it would really be helpful and to the applicant and save a bunch of time and all
Well, look, I don't know that we decided anything. We discussed it.
I don't think we've really discussed it.
No, we did discuss it, but not,
that? We discussed it.
but not to the point where we made a decision. So what I'm asking is, does the board want to take that up for discussion again? And you don't know
Tell
what we're
Kevin,
talking
tell
about.
Kevin what it is.
I'm just
so-
listening.
It's a whole,
Just, you guys just keep.
It's a process for going through, land assessment in advance of getting to a final development plan for
Yeah.
subdivision.
It's like having an informal,
Well, it's a design review phase. and
Right.
It is a very resource-based assessment of the land, and so that we're sure that the houses are being put on not the conservation overlay lands, but in developable places that are also desirable. So it's just a way to do land planning before you get to the final where you have all the roads laid out. So the first thing to look at the natural resources that you've got there and things that you wanna conserve, and then where are the best development areas, and set them up, and then draw your lot lines and your roads to get to them. So it's, rather than putting your road in and then doing your dimensional lots off of it, it allows for, I think, a greater sensitivity to what's there on the land.
do you still have copies of this?
I should, yes.
Because maybe you could get Kevin
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if
and I think,
have
Kevin, it would
here.
save, it could save the developer a lot of time and money, because of, as Vicki said, to talk about things ahead of time instead of them coming in with spend a ton of money in their whole final thing, and then we say, oh, sorry.
Well, I mean, yeah, one of the things that we have, and correct me when I'm wrong, I won't say if, but, there's a lot of leeway given, and so like, somebody can come in and say, okay, I wanna have a final hearing, and it's gonna cost them money, and they don't realize that they might have been better served by having either an informal or a preliminary. And I think, as I recall, that this made it a requirement that what was it, for the preliminary or for an informal?
For the, design review, which
It would be
would be
separate.
preliminary.
It would be preliminary.
Yeah.
Preliminary, yes, so there have been instances where that's happened, and, to the chagrin of.
But, you know, it makes sense, I think, for a major subdivision for them to do that,
Yeah, I do too.
so.
I think just for major subdivision, I think minor subdivision.
No, I'm not talking about
Yeah.
minor subdivision.
It's just the minor,
Major subdivision. And I guess, with the other thing, we could either do this whole design review, or we could just change the requirements and say that preliminary hearing is required.
We don't really have, I don't know what our requirements are. I mean, for some reason, that was a problem, and I just haven't looked at it in a while to see what our requirements are for preliminary, anyway.
All right, so how about this? Everybody give themselves some time to read up again on what Vicky had supplied us.
Yeah, and actually, what I supplied you was more of a soup to nuts thing that
Right.
could be abbreviated.
It would,
You
yeah.
know, what are the important things that we wanna look at?
Right.
Right, well, you
Yeah,
supplied us what Hanover has, right? Is that what it is?
It was actually taken from Randall Arendt, who's the guy who did all the conservation subdivision work down in Massachusetts. And his work has been in Bucks County, Pennsylvania and all that, so
Right,
it's
right.
kind of, right?
What a mess.
Right.
Total
Yeah, but
mess.
what it does is it allows for clusters. I mean, that's what it basically is clustering houses so that the wetlands all are, stay in one lot and managed.
Well, look,
It's just a
everybody read up on this, and let's take it from there.
Do you, I think I sent them
I'm
out.
pretty sure I have
You
to
have
dig
it?
back
You-
through.
You send it back to me.
So-
I can send it out to everyone.
Why don't you just send it
Yeah,
to
send it,
everybody?
'cause
It's just as easy to
Yeah.
I thought I
planning
had
board
something
is the addressee and everyone gets it.
Okay. Okay, and just going over, we wanna get back to the housing chapter, but I think
Yeah.
we should probably wait until we
Well, the
get
thing is that I don't know that we're gonna get any, we don't have any like housing questions coming, and so I think.
Well, but we're still,
We're getting input.
We're getting input,
Yes.
and we may
Yes.
want to, the planning board may want to have its own survey as a follow-up, or not.
Right,
But that's a
right.
possibility.
Yeah, sounds like LCDC is getting done with what they feel the charge is.
Well, that remains to be seen,
Yeah.
but in terms of what the
Well,
planning
we're
board
doing,
may or may not want, we have that option.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I put in my budget, and I believe it made it through, so go to town meeting, an extra $1,500 for planning board projects.
Thank you very much.
So,
Well, and we do need to follow up with Megan and get the build out.
Yeah, so
and
that's another thing I wanted to address. I think we talked, maybe you weren't here, but, you were here.
No, I was here,
Yeah.
we're gonna sit down and
We're
have a
gonna,
work
what we
session,
need to
yeah.
do is to sit down and
Right.
go through that so that
Right.
we know what
Yep.
we want.
Yep,
So why don't we actually schedule that so that we do it?
yep.
When is,
When is David not gonna, actually, we need you for that, cause there's a lot of
Yeah,
detail,
we're
we wanna
gonna-
go lot by lot.
yeah, we do.
And,
um,
it's gonna be tedious.
yeah, if you wanna do an evening, I can change my schedule, my schedule normally is 8 to 4, but Thursdays when I'm do meeting nights, I do 1 to 9. So if you have a meeting that you want me to, I'll just change my schedule for that day to 1 to 9 with select board approval.
The
Well,
thing is that LCDC meets on all those alternate Thursdays,
we could,
so, I mean, we should take one of our own, and like, what's coming up next planning board meeting?
yeah, what do we have in 2 weeks?
I have nothing at the moment.
So-
Maybe we should just do that.
Let's do
block it
that,
out,
let's
yeah.
block that out.
'Cause we need to.
Okay, I
get
will.
it done.
except nothing for,
Okay, so
Applications.
that will be a working,
Yeah, unless like
if there's an emergency.
Wayne and
yeah.
Tammy wanna come in and talk about it, we should talk to them so that we get them along, you know,
Right,
moving along.
any
with it.
applicant has priority if they have a,
Informal, but half an hour.
Yeah.
That's it.
all right, good. And, I did wanna,
It's 14,
yeah.
this is really good, you should do it every year. Oh, how long?
I don't know whether anybody saw this, but it's, given all the discussion with, I think Duncan McIntosh keeps bringing up town forests and
Oh, the camping.
monetizing
glamping.
things. So there's
Yeah.
there was this article in the Union Leader. Community-owned forests produce 146 million in economic benefits yearly, report says, and 180,000 acres, and which are 4% of the state's forest land. If anybody wants this, does anybody want it?
I think I saw it actually.
Everybody
You know
I
said-
thought I sent it, you sent it to me and I sent it out to
No, I
everyone.
sent,
Or
I
you
sent it, I
You
sent it
said,
to
okay.
everyone, and there's a workshop.
No, this is different than the one you
Oh,
said.
that's the Union Leader
Yeah,
coverage of
yeah.
Karen Bennett's stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, there's also, if you look under this app called Tentor, or website TENTRR, have you guys seen that?
I don't even
People
know.
are, you know, it's kinda like Airbnb, except they set up a tent.
Right,
And,
Duncan sent that to me. and I think I
Okay,
Oh,
sent
right,
it to you
right.
guys.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there are places in Lyme already on Tentor.
Really?
Really?
Yes, it's,
Didn't know
yeah,
that. In the woods somewhere.
in the woods.
As much as I like the idea that Duncan has been promoting, he really undersells the need for administration.
Well, liability insurance.
Well, aside from that, I used to work for the state, worked at a campground all through college. People are slobs, and so you do need to pick up. People are going to want campfires, they're going to be, even if you say no fires, there will be people trying to collect fees. You know, you have people showing up late in the afternoon after the town office is closed. You have no way of collecting fees. It's not a,
Yeah, you need somebody full-time that would be.
right, you would need
managing it,
to
yeah.
have somebody managing and doing cleanup, making sure that people are paying
That's
fees.
commercial recreation, which isn't allowed in most easement areas, and if you bought stuff with the conservation fund money, I'm not sure commercial
Well, no,
recreation
I
is
think
even
what
covered.
Duncan was talking about was the town forest.
Yeah.
I know, but I'm saying, what did we use, what was that, did that come out of our conservation fund to purchase that?
Not,
I don't know.
So you need to like, and if it's using land and water conservation fund money, that you have to purchase the property, you can't charge, or you have to charge everybody that, you know, residents and other people the same, and there are limitations depending upon what kind of funds you use.
any public thoughts about this?
I'd be intrigued to see that article that you got.
Oh, oh,
I think it was a summary, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
keep it.
Summary in one of the
Sure.
New Hampshire bulletins or something.
Thanks.
all right, and,
By the way,
oops.
sorry, US Census,
Yes,
have you seen the census blocks?
I have not,
You need to reply to them, because they've got Lyme divided by the Dorchester Road. Like, why would we want our census block to look like that? I mean, so the north part of town and the south part of town to get census data? I mean, I think we need to have some different areas to make that meaningful data for us.
yeah, Olivia sent me an email today that said, here are the existing
Right.
CD.
Well, there's
yeah,
census
CDP.
blocks and then the community designated places.
Yeah, and
Or census designated
the
places.
census designated
Yeah,
places.
yeah.
And she just sent the existing ones, she said nothing showing anything new.
No, there are two colors which don't show up, they're little dots in orange. If you look, there are 4 categories. And
Okay.
Hanover was like, you couldn't even tell, but Lyme was divided right in half. And it's like, well, why would we want that? I mean, let's, if we're gonna do it, north-south makes a whole lot more sense to me. Or let's do Route 10 corridor with, you know, Lyme Plain and maybe up to Lyme Center and along Route 10 or something else so that, you know, it's meaningful data.
I think probably something to bring to the board to discuss also, that seems to be,
I don't know how soon she needs it.
yeah, I don't know, and I'm not sure, I'd have to, I just got the email today, and
Yeah,
it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me
No.
what she sent out, and so I'm,
No, I know. Well, I was like, cause I got it for Hanover, and I was like, whoa, look at Lyme, I mean, what are we doing with that? I mean, it's like, you know, we wanna be able to use the data, you know?
right, yeah, doing the blocks north and south doesn't,
Well, it's dividing the town right across the belt.
So is there a way to get her feedback about it?
Well, I think there needs to be some follow-up. She's very pregnant, I think, you know, and so it's good to call her sooner rather than later.
okay.
She's gonna be going away soon, for.
Do you want me to see if I can print that out real quick and just show the board right tonight?
Sure.
I couldn't tell what the colors were.
Yeah, let me see if well, you have a color printer, let me see if it comes out on this.
Yeah, and I was just looking on the screen and because it's.
So, yeah, so a little backwards. So census by.
Federal census?
Federal,
Mhm.
yeah.
So we've got an option to put in quadrants or zones or districts or.
She said that there were 2010 areas and proposed 2020 spaces,
Mhm.
you know, areas. And I'm not sure who proposed them.
Mhm.
And
It's, who's,
this is a woman who works at the Regional Planning Commission. She's probably got it.
Olivia?
Olivia,
Oh,
right, yeah,
Olivia.
yeah, okay, so you know her.
I don't know her.
So she
Okay.
decides how the towns are divided up?
She's probably the person, somebody has to follow up with the towns and, you know, the Regional Planning Commission probably helps organize. And so she sent this thing out and was like, are you kidding? You know, well, it just, I like data and I want it to be collected in a meaningful way and it doesn't help us if we can't use it,
Right.
you know, in some way to tell a story about the town and
Right,
the line across the midline just.
doesn't help.
So
No.
Vicki, I don't understand, what's that mean? When they do the census, you mean the town, they don't do the whole town?
No,
They do-
everybody gets counted, and then they aggregate some of the counts into the blocks or the census designated places.
What's
So
that
that,
mean?
it means that, okay, for downtown Hanover, think about that, you know, that's a census designated place
I
where,
mean, they'd say how many people are in downtown?
yeah,
So-
how
yeah.
many, you know, people are living in group quarters, you know, how many, the age, you know, we'll see a lot of students there
Okay.
and that type of thing, so, yeah.
So for Lyme, they just divided on Dorchester Road, so that wouldn't.
Right from the river all the way to
Right,
Dorchester.
so you're saying that wouldn't give us any.
It doesn't give
Well,
us anything
you,
useful.
you do remember the wars between North and South Lyme?
Yeah.
It was a-
So maybe just open it up and ask the question in another way, or just ask, you know,
What
can you
would,
think about
useful,
what you might want to see, and where would you use it from a planning perspective?
right.
Yeah, Vicki, this is all I got from her, and this is, it doesn't talk anything about tracks, or blocks, or, so they're changing them with like input, but,
No, cause I had to go whoop, whoop, whoop,
Okay,
whoop.
so let's
Yeah,
just go on the assumption that
Yeah.
what Vicky saw is right, that they've got
Right.
lines.
Yeah, so what would-
They're
So I
actually-
think the question really is.
What do we want?
What,
Yeah,
what, you know, what would we like to
Right.
see?
Right.
What would be helpful, what would be beneficial?
Well, Vicky, you're probably the most qualified. What would you
Yeah,
like?
well,
I was,
the Lyme Common and Lyme Center districts maybe was two.
Maybe,
Yeah.
well, I don't know, I was kinda thinking, you know, River Road, Route 10, Lyme Common, maybe would, you know, there'd be a line there and then everything to the east. So it'd be more of a north-south
And
line rather than an east-west
Right.
line. I'll send you what I have,
Yeah.
tomorrow.
okay, I'm not gonna be in tomorrow, but that's,
Okay. Because I looked at Hanover and actually there's a whole bunch of little, you know, we had 4 or 5 different areas in Hanover, which, again, you know, they were going along Prescott Road and then, you know, everything north of that was in one thing.
And
It's
I
like-
know when they
Didn't
they
make
map
sense.
these, they do like to have it along features. They don't like to,
Well-
because then they can map it in Tiger
Right.
based on,
Well, okay, there was also a line right down Hanover Center Road, so that one half of Etna was in one, and one half of the village of Etna was in another. And it's like, you know, really? It just,
it would make far more sense, at least for Lyme, to, like you say, north-south, where you're putting the east Lyme where there is far more rural area.
right.
And the western part of the town where you have far more of the
I was
population.
thinking like Orfordville Road might be out in the, you know, in that eastern part, I don't know, but
Yeah.
it might, I
All right,
mean,
so how are we leaving this
well, we have to see what, I mean, if they didn't send you what I saw, that's crazy.
Yeah, they, like I say, there's this, I'm reaching out, in relation to the 2020 census. The Census
Right.
Bureau has proposed changes to tracts, blocks, and CDPs, Census
Yeah.
Defined Places, in Grafton County. We'd like to know if Lyme has any comments in regards to these modifications, particularly CDPs, which,
Right.
CDPs are
the
the.
Census Defined
All right,
Places,
so.
which there are none, you know, Lyme is
Just as, it's all one,
right, it's,
because of the population probably, but I saw a line drawn right across
So-
Lyme, so I'm gonna
so-
send you what I had.
yeah, I would like to see what you have, because that,
So why don't you send them what you
Yeah, I
had,
will.
and
I will.
it
We'll
looks
see if we
like,
can just rotate the line.
so David needs to get what you saw, and then it sounds, well, does it sound like we would like David to give her feedback, saying we want a north-south line rather than an east-west?
so, and,
I mean, to me, my first pass would be just on the districts.
I don't think we get more than one, because they have to
Oh,
have a.
more than one line?
Yeah, because they
Oh.
need to have a minimum amount of population
Okay.
in order for
Yeah,
the,
that's what I.
the sample to you know, generate, you know,
Okay.
meaningful data, because they don't get enough people who are over
So
65.
I've got one line
You
to
get
pick.
one line
Right,
through the
so-
Yeah,
town.
so we'd prefer the north-south line.
yeah, and we can look at, what would kind of make sense
Right.
to,
Well, I wonder if like Baker Hill.
I was thinking Baker Hill, and then,
Orford-
yeah, then maybe
Orford
up,
to Orfordville,
Acorn,
Orfordville.
Acorn to Orfordville, and that would give you a good, and like I said, the Census Bureau, when they define these, they wanna have it defined along a feature, because they have their own database, a Tiger, and they wanna be able to pick the features out of Tiger, so that everything kinda
Yeah.
nests.
All right, so we got the line there.
I think so,
Yeah,
but I will still send you what I saw.
absolutely.
And I did want to ask David, who's been faithfully
They probably
attending
do.
these
Without-
meetings, whether you had any questions or input or anything.
No, well, my one question is, can I get on the email list so that I can get information in advance, because I didn't get any.
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't realize that, John, you were gonna be continually coming, so
Yes,
So
I
I will-
will give you my email, I think.
I have your email, it just was, I didn't
Yeah,
realize.
if I could just get on the regular list, because I need prompting to remember the meetings, and also I'd like to know what the agenda is.
Well,
before dinner.
he has not agreed to be, he's
Right.
interested in being an alternate, but he's not ready to, I assume
Yeah.
you're still not ready to.
Well, I'm still learning, so.
Well, I would just say
Whenever
that-
you wanna promote me, I might
I would-
accept it.
I would
We're all
promote
still
you
learning.
because number one, that's how people learn. Number two, you have a lot of experience anyway, and I would say the biggest thing is we need
Shows up.
an alternate, and you show up,
Yeah, and then you'd automatically get everything.
and you get everything.
Well, that's what I would like to do.
Okay, so I would like to nominate, is that what I do, I nominate? Is it-
A point.
I would like to make a motion to appoint David Van Wee as an alternate, if he would be willing to accept, which he's indicated he was. Do I have a second?
I'll say
I have a second, all those in favor?
How long is his term?
forever.
Yeah, forever.
It'd be 3 years.
Till
is the-
death do us
Yeah,
part.
3 years, oh, yeah. So all those in favor?
Until further promotion is called for.
Does he need to get sworn in?
He will need to, we will talk to Patty Jenks
Yeah.
to get a form, and,
So now so now you can
So-
send him,
yeah, I will get you on, I will put you on the official email list.
Great, thank
And
you.
then, what'll have to happen is Patty Jinks will do an oath of office, you'll have to come in and, or she'll give it to me and I'll have you sign it and I'll give it back to her.
Yeah,
Just-
where does he do the blood drawing?
I think right in the office.
And then we'll have to discuss the fee.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and so in order to, I think this is right, so in order to actually sit and work on a case, you'll need to have already signed your oath of office.
And then as an alternate, if there's a regular member missing, then you could get appointed to be a regular member
For that.
for that hearing.
Yeah.
Right,
and-
that's right, that's what John explained to me,
Yeah.
was that if you don't have enough, if somebody has to recuse themselves,
Right.
Or somebody's out.
or is absent, then I could then.
So like tonight, for instance, Eric isn't here, so if we had an alternate, they could have been.
They would have had a full board.
Yeah.
And traditionally, with this board, the alternates participate in all the discussions.
Good,
Yeah,
okay.
they participate in all the discussions, just they don't vote at the end with the,
Yeah,
Unless you-
unless they're
That's fine.
appointed.
That's a good way to learn, actually.
Yeah.
I've never seen that model before, but I like it.
It is a good way
both
to
the
learn.
planning board and the zoning board do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Interesting this should come up. I've drafted a note.
Funny you should say that.
I've drafted a note that said I would be very interested in being an alternate on the board as well.
Okay. Well,
So I would humbly request whatever I'm supposed to say.
okay.
Make a motion.
Well,
How many?
that's what I wanna, you
Five.
double check and see how
I
many.
think 5
I
alternates.
think, I'm pretty sure 5 is the, actually, different vote.
How many do we have now?
3.
4?
3.
Is Dave 4?
No, David's 3.
And
Huh?
at some point, I'd like to get the site plan review guidelines. or-
Yeah, I will get all
whatever.
that.
I've got an old zoning.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll put together a packet with all the current information. I'll get you one of these nice handy dandy books.
So, the one thing I'll just say in terms of your
Mhm.
participation, that you will, when, in obvious, or not even obvious, you're gonna have to recuse yourself
Yep.
from cases that
Mhm.
might benefit you.
I mean, that goes without saying,
Okay.
yes.
I'm getting there.
So Amber,
David, Roby, Amber, and
David, Roby,
Amber,
and
now David.
David.
that's 3.
Three.
That's 3. So I'm fairly confident Richie's correct that it's 5. I just
I
wanted
think
to.
so too. I think
Well, that's what it is.
another thing in your case, Rich, is that you haven't come to enough planning board meetings. So,
Yeah.
so just keep that in mind.
All right, thank you, John.
That could be a problem.
Okay, so, go to 673-2.
I've got the book right in front of me, I didn't even know it.
We all.
Have you already read it?
I have not.
You're automatically in.
Okay, in all other towns, the planning board shall consist of 5 or 7 members as determined by the local legislative body. The membership shall be filled by one of the following ways. We're elected, and the wording of the, and this is appointment in terms of local land use board members.
I have written this.
I'm just trying to get on the right page.
It's 385.
Mayor, appointed by the mayor.
Appointed by the mayor.
Maybe our bylaws say how many alternates we have. I've got
Unless they
I've
here.
got our bylaws. No, well, it may be that we just have that, in our bylaws. So our membership is alternate members shall be appointed by the planning board, designated by the board to act in vacancies. And, we get 5 members.
Page 673-6, bottom left-hand corner. The local legislative body may provide for the appointment of not more than 5 alternate members to any local appointed land use board, who shall be appointed by the appointing authority. The terms of alternate members shall be 3 years.
Well,
Does that sound like
our
it?
legislative body is not the planning board.
Well, that's the town.
No, it says the legislative body may provide for the appointment of.
Right, and I think that they approve the.
That would delegate it to this board to be able to appoint, which would be your
I mean,
bylaws.
my.
So if you go back, what David's suggesting, I think.
Should be your
The planning
bylaws.
board may appoint five
Well,
alternate members.
They're either written into the bylaws or it came to the
Right,
town for a
it's
vote.
not, because, here's membership, 5 members, alternate members shall be appointed, but it doesn't say how many alternate members.
But this caps it, because this is the state law.
Caps it at 5.
That governs
State law
that.
would cap it,
So,
so.
Yeah.
so you could choose to say no more than 3,
Right,
but this says 5, no more than 5.
Right.
right, we don't have anything in here, oh, wait a minute, no, nope, we don't have anything in here that says how many alternates we should have. This is our planning
It's-
board rule.
We have the state rule which says no more than 5.
So maybe just make a
Oh, here's
motion
another,
to
an
amend,
elected planning board may appoint 5 alternate members for a term of 3
just
years,
amend this.
which shall be staggered in the
To
same
amend
manner as
what?
elected.
I think,
So,
The guy,
don't we have to make,
the rules of procedure.
we would need to, we can't just like do that on the fly, that
You
at
can't.
least has to be.
But I mean,
noticed.
right now, we're governed by the state,
Right.
Okay.
which
So-
is the upper right-hand corner.
Okay,
Yeah,
of that
we'll
fine,
sentence.
I'm familiar with
Number
it.
2
Duly
there.
notified meeting of board provided the proposed or read at one meeting preceding the vote, so.
So we could amend this, and maybe we should,
Yeah.
to not to exceed 5 alternates.
Right,
Yeah.
But we gotta do it, we gotta notice it.
yeah.
and
Yeah,
then it-
but as of
And then
now,
read it, and
it's,
then you
it
vote
doesn't make
next
any
time.
practical difference. We are governed by the state.
Right,
That's just a clarification.
so we can vote
Okay.
on that.
Yeah, all right, so,
I'll move
do you want
to accept Rich's volunteerism to become an alternate.
Okay, I'll second it. But let's not vote on it. I'm just trying to make it as hard as
What,
possible.
with this, I don't see in here how you, remove an alternate, I'm not remove an alternate, but if somebody decides they don't wanna be an alternate
They
anymore.
quit.
They just quit?
They just quit.
Okay,
Okay,
so.
so.
you're still okay?
Yeah, no, I just,
That didn't last long.
well, I mean, cause if you hit 5, and then one of the people just never shows
Shows
up,
up.
and you
Well,
want, and
no,
somebody
no,
else wants to
actually,
be on.
actually, in general, if people start to not show up, and this has happened,
You'd have
they've
to ask them to
been,
resign.
they've been removed,
Right.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, after so many, I think there's so many times, so many meetings
Yeah,
they miss.
if they miss one meeting. All right, what were we doing with Rich? So, let's, I think we need a long discussion about it. Now, all right, so all those in favor?
Welcome aboard.
Vicky? Yeah, okay, so,
Thank
all those, wait a minute, all those opposed? Let's all, well, welcome aboard and behave yourself.
I will try.
Okay. Anybody else got anything?
I have a question,
Okay,
just quick. In the church news, there's a,
It was wrong.
yeah,
It was wrong.
okay.
It was brought to my attention to.
oh, yeah, it was
Nils,
completely wrong.
which made me panic that Patty got it wrong on.
That's what I wondered.
The ballots, but she fortunately has ballots posted, and I went and checked,
Yeah,
and,
I did too.
Not quite sure how Cat proved that.
yeah, and Nils was very unhappy, and I had to tell him, I'm very sorry, but the church newsletter is not an official town,
Unhappy about what?
that it was
And it was
wrong.
miswritten.
And I
Well, it's not an official arm of the,
Right.
it was nothing that I had a chance to review, so I couldn't catch it, so that there's no,
Right, that was my only.
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's, and
But I read this.
I have not seen Patty since, and I won't see her till Monday, so I will tell her on Monday.
I think she's aware. In fact, I know she's aware.
Okay, then,
yeah.
but I did check the ballot, she, the sample ballot she has out,
Floor area.
and made sure.
It's not under our
No,
control.
okay.
But it was just discussed this morning as a select board. We recognize that there was an error. I'm not quite sure how it happened, but we also recognize that it was not an official document for us to read. And that everything else, Patty confirmed everything else was written correctly, so.
Okay. All right, anybody got anything else? Or do they wanna go home?
Soon?
I'll take that as affirmative that the meeting is over.